I'm going to call the meeting to order at 4:04 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Barry?
Here.
Blunt? Botcher?
Here.
Compost?
He's here.
He's getting a snack. He's here.
He's in the basement.
Chestnut?
Here?
Cohen?
More or less.
Goodison?
Here.
Henry? Hildreth?
Here.
Tattersall?
Here.
Waller?
Here.
All right, I'm gonna get-
Madam Chair, as far as attendance goes, I have a 6 o'clock flight, so I'll be out of here a little before 5.
Okay, thank you.
I just must be.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know. All right, next is the approval of the minutes.
I move approval
Yeah,
of the minutes.
second email.
Oh, I'm sorry. I take it back. I skipped one. Adoption of the agenda is
Yeah.
next. I was hurrying up for Mr. Cohen. Adoption of the agenda. Am I going to have to make you two sit separately? No. Sorry. Adoption of the agenda.
So
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
Nope.
All right, next is the approval of the minutes.
I move
Yeah,
approval of
and
the
I'll
minutes.
second it now.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Can I say, Madam Chair, as somebody that wasn't here for the last meeting, it looked very good.
But you
very
can't vote.
productive,
Yeah.
and the minutes were very useful. Thank
Yeah. You didn't vote on the minutes, though, did you?
you. No.
Okay, good. You're not here. Mr. Feldman? All right, so business discussion items 190102, work plan, Article 1B, discuss draft language for a proposed preamble to the city charter. So this was my color-coded stab at it. It's from the model plan, but I cobbled different suggestions within that preamble part together as best I could. You know, and that's why I color-coded it, because what a preamble is obviously it's the source of authority, which is your state constitution or statutory law. The action taken is the adoption of the charter, and the intent is to comprise subjective statements not enforceable by law that underscore or illuminate the characteristics of a municipality. So that is in the blue. I mean, you know, while I couldn't put Colley's, Mr. Blount's language because it didn't fit these definitions exactly, I did try to bring in equal opportunity, broad cultural diversity, inclusiveness, and justice and equality. I mean, I used all the words, but again, this is just like an introduction. It's not, it's not enforceable by law. So if anybody wants to wordsmith it or have suggestions or whatever, and not every charter does have a preamble, but, I think given what the city of Gainesville represents, I think it would be useful to state our unique things that we strive for in our community. Anybody?
Well done.
Yes.
Extremely well done.
I think it sets the tone. It sets the tone for the
You pulled
document.
it off.
Okay, can I go now?
So,
Yes.
so Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we adopt the preamble, the draft preamble is presented.
Second.
And
Oh, you want to say something?
I do. Yeah, I'm glad you seconded it. Move things along. No, in recognizing exactly the whole purpose of this, I think that this is a very perfectly worded for the purposes, and it's not something where we're going to weight it down. I think the operative words that I think what Mr. Blount was trying to get to are appropriate, the way you incorporated them here. And then some of the things that were discussed at the last meeting on this, I think through the process of our discussion, it became pretty clear that the city is addressing a lot of the issues that are concerned Mr. Blount, and so I'm confident that this is going to, take care of what needs to be taken care of.
And I wanted to point out too, again, we had that discussion, like there's not just racial inequality, there's gender, there's, LGBT, socioeconomic, whatever. So that covers anybody and everybody that's not being treated equal. And my big thing, again, being a former elected official, is home rule, because we see, as usual, what's going on in Tallahassee again. So it's just every year, and if we just don't, pound that in somewhere, whether or not they, listen to us. But anybody else have anything else?
It's great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, cool. All right, so 190177, Work Plan Article 3B. And this is, and I printed everything else and left it at home.
Me too.
I actually left it at my job. So, and so thank you. Oh, right, Omi's request. So she, Miss Gainey, I just know it's Omi because we're both city fellow clerks, is just, aside from the shall versus may, or language, she's requesting that instead of clerk of commission to city clerk, and I understand, I mean, it's the Florida Association of City Clerk, it's the international, or municipal clerk, but I think it certainly better reflects what we are called throughout the state, so I certainly don't have a problem with it at all.
Does this need a motion?
Mm-hmm.
I move we, from here on forward, refer to the city clerk as the city clerk.
Refer to the commission.
Refer to the commission as the city clerk.
So that language would change in that portion
Right.
of the charter
Right.
officers.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Pardon me.
Do you have a problem?
I think the intent of the wording of the motion is that anywhere that we refer to the clerk of the commission, reclassify it as the city clerk. Is that what it is? I think, as you said,
I think it's
we will
also in
refer
the-
to her as, and I don't know if we got specific as to actually change it in the charter.
Change it in the charter,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
say
that was
the
the
charter.
intent, we just didn't say it. That's the only reason why I
Yeah.
bring it up.
want it in
Okay.
there, yeah.
Okay,
If anybody goes
right.
back to
Actually,
the
yes.
minutes and see what the
Yeah.
motion is, you said,
Yeah.
well, you never said to change it in
Right.
the
Okay,
charter.
right,
I
okay,
just
so-
want to clarify,
So
I
you're
think that's your
That-
intent.
I will take that as a friendly amendment, that within the city charter and in our discussions from here on forward, we use the phrase city clerk.
Here. I agree.
All right, thank you. All right, moving along. 190890, Charter Officer Analysis. And I left everything else. Does that?
Oh, this is from.
Hang on a minute, I left everything at the office.
This is the memorandum from the charter
I
officers.
think this was, yeah, this was
We had
the
gone-
same thing from last time.
Yeah.
We had
That's-
gone through,
it's
but
the-
we had several to finish.
2 or 3 to finish.
Yes, we were left, I got it. Okay, never mind. So we had left off on,
We left off on number 8. Create a new section, Article 5, special positions.
correct, thank you.
That was the one we did not.
Thank you. All right. So this is in regard to, I think, Mr. Tattersall suggestion that we change the amount to 15% of the registered voters.
No,
No?
this is the creation, because right now the way to change, to enact,
For the referendum process.
there's no referendum
Change to
process.
the ordinance.
So this is to create a referendum process, because right now there's only the charter amendment process.
Right.
So that's actually number 9, which would, the suggestion was to increase that from 15 to 20%.
Right.
So the creation of the charter amendment, and I agree with the analysis here, is that we should limit the ability of these referendums or these ordinances, citizen initiatives, so it doesn't have fiscal impacts and sell utilities and things like that, and also that it can be repealed by the city commission in a certain amount of time if need be, so that they're not because right now, in order to enact something like the Hogtown Creek one, that's been in place since 2000, or since 98, and there's been no real way to change it, because it's literally in the charter.
Right,
Yeah, so I agree completely with that.
analysis.
Yeah, to model the way to do that. I've thought a lot about this.
What section, or, I guess I don't have the draft
Page
in front of me.
4.
Yeah, page
Oh, special
8.
provisions, all right, thank you.
Yeah,
Yep,
so
yeah.
this was, we talked about the Lakeland model, we talked about Austin, we talked about a few other ones. I can write up specifically, but I've thought a lot about this, and one of the things that I thought a lot about is the permanence of a charter and how hard it is to change. And that's why a lot of things are prescribed as done by ordinance, because it's easier to change.
Correct.
So I feel like almost it would be nicer to have an ordinance that could change the citizen initiative process, as opposed to directly having it spelled out and hard to change. Does that,
Yes.
yeah.
So in our report to the commission, the mayor and the commission, that would be part of the white paper of, okay, this is what we thought, but now instead of putting it in the charter,
Well, is there, I'm not positive, is there an ability to reference it in the charter and say as prescribed by ordinance? Kind of like how we do city elections and things like that, or did
that
city
would be a
elections?
legal question, I would say. Are you all got?
Are y'all tracking?
We are trying to.
Okay, so
So you want the commission to adopt an ordinance that would create a process?
does it need to be referenced in as a, does it need to be something in the charter that says there shall be a citizen initiative process as prescribed by ordinance? Or can the city commission just create an ordinance now?
Madam Chair, are we on an agenda item? I'm confused.
Yes, we are on 190890.
Is that part of the charter officer review?
No.
No.
Item number 8 is where they left off last week.
That
Remember, we
explains
had
it.
11 items, and we only got through 7
It's
of them
in
in
the
our last meeting.
memorandum.
So
Yeah,
we're picking up where we
I looked
left
at the
off.
memorandum, I didn't see
Yeah.
it, that's why I was confused.
It's page 4.
Which part of the memorandum?
It's page 4.
Item number 8.
Yeah, we had gotten
Item
through the
number
first
8.
7.
4 of it.
Yeah, we
Okay, I
got
see
through
it
the
now.
7, and
All
now
right.
this is the 8.
I'm up to speed now.
Boy, a
Thank
lot
you.
of us are a little lost in the sauce.
It's Monday.
Not just,
Collective.
it's collective. It's March Madness.
I was just afraid to ask the question, thank you for it.
It'll be the first time I was lost, so.
We have conferred and we think it would be appropriate, it sounds like what you want to do is recommend to the commission that they adopt an ordinance that creates this citizen referendum process for citizens to propose ordinances to the commission.
And that doesn't have to be in the charter for them to do, they can just make an ordinance.
So then the motion would be to,
Well, I mean, discuss, what do people think about that?
I think, I agree. Again, I always depend on staff, they know better. I don't want to create fiscal or operational impacts as well as, the ordinances that way could be, amended or repealed as needed. Again, you don't want too specific things in your charter.
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
know.
because like even using the Lakeland model, which was you have a committee that comes together and then the clerk verifies the signatures, that seems like it could be burdensome, especially if our population grows significantly, which is possible, you know.
Miss Susan.
When we were discussing this last time when you first brought it up, at first I was kind of like, oh yeah, this kind of sounds interesting, but then thinking about it a little more deeply and reflecting back to my time on a commission, I do not support the idea of citizens putting forth an ordinance per se, because we already have that process. We elect the people that we want to represent us. We have the right and the ability to petition them, to meet with them, to say, hey, we think this needs to be changed. You guys should have an ordinance to this. And I don't think people haven't come forward with probably very rough or draft ordinance language to say, hey, this community is addressing what we see as a problem this way, can you move this forward? I think we already have that process. So I'm not even for putting this forth for them to have to talk about and chew on, because I think we already do this as a very active community.
Oh, I think Ms. Goodison was next.
I think it's well defined if you want to bring a citizen's initiative to the county commission. I don't think it's defined at all if you want to do that for the city. And I could see citizens bringing, all they're going to do is bring forth the initiative with the signatures and ask you to put it on the ballot. But if we didn't have that process, we never would have had choices, because that's how I was able to move it forward. So I support it. I think.
Go ahead.
My question was more clarification for Jeremiah. Are you proposing that we not move this forward, or are you proposing that we propose a charter amendment that directs the city to then put this in place?
So I'm reluctant to have specific language enshrined in the charter
Yes.
that's hard to change, which is because in order to have a citizen initiative process, you have to like say, well, how are the signatures going to be verified? What's the number? What?
So I understand that part, but are you saying that, would you still propose an amendment that says the city should have a process in place, and the details will be then set forth by
This would be a
ordinance?
recommendation,
Did you
just
say
like we were.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Well,
but
no, is it a recommendation, or
yeah.
is it a?
Not in the
or
charter.
is
You
don't
it a
want it in the
proposed
charter.
We
amendment?
don't want it in the charter.
Not at all,
I mean,
Well,
to
I'm
set
sorry.
forth a process versus the details of the
Well, I
process.
think I know where you're going with this. I think you want to put in the charter that the city shall have a process for a citizen to bring an issue like this forward, but there would be a separate ordinance
To implement
that,
the details.
that would implement how that would occur, and it wouldn't be in the charter. The charter is just saying that that ordinance will exist, and
exist.
then the commission will set forth in the ordinance how that process will be.
Like we did with the residence issue.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
The same, because
Okay.
you don't want it to be
Too
written-
prescriptive.
Yeah, too prescriptive.
I
So
totally agree.
I would be more supportive of that, but also looking through all of this and reading the minutes and knowing where everyone kind of stands on issues and stuff, I can see this ballot being a book at this point. So like, if this is something that could be taken off, I understand that too. But I did a lot of thinking about this because choices was the example I kept coming back to. Is like we got choices, and friends of mine lived, would have died without choices, and that was there because there was this process.
Right.
But we did get rid of some things.
But
We
I
did
think
knock
with
some.
this language,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like that more, to have that kind of very, what's the right word? Broad language, yeah.
So, I think it'd be something, so is the city of Gainesville, and the city commission will ensure, equal, access to city government, and therefore will enact an ordinance to bring initiatives on, also
Facilitate.
to facilitate a citizen initiative to be considered as an ordinance or something to that effect.
Donna,
Like that?
hang on.
I didn't
Time
put in a
out,
motion
time
because I'm
Time out.
rambling.
Donna's next, and then Mr. Donna.
I would just hate for us to drop this entirely. This was one of the things that I thought was an extremely good idea from a bunch of different viewpoints. So I really favor language that directs them
Okay.
to put this To have a process in place.
Mr. Henry?
And I was going to say, don't citizens already have equal access to government? You were throwing out a language.
Well, that was.
Well,
yeah.
I think what Commissioner Chestnut mentioned was that it's not spelled out how that will work in the city arena, where in the county, they actually have it spelled out. So I think in the charter, what we were recommending is, because it's not spelled out, if we put something in the charter saying we will have a process, that will spell it out.
Yeah,
And
I
then
agree
figure it
with
out
that.
later.
I mean, when you were doing the draft language about equal
Oh,
access.
he was just
that's
talking.
all. But the second thing to me,
It's creative.
if the charter already has this
It does not.
It does not.
It does not.
Okay, well, I thought he just said that.
The county.
The
Yeah,
county
that's what
commission.
I'm saying. If the county has it,
Then mimic
then
the
what we
language.
could do, yeah, is mimic their language to an extent. Instead of just continuing to discuss it, you know? I mean, if there's something already in place, then let's just mimic it or relate it to what we're wanting to achieve here.
Jeremiah, can I put you in charge of that?
Yeah, but before we move on, I have a question about what we're talking about here. If you look at section 5.06, the item that I think we initially said we recommend removal of, under what provision was this section 506 presented to the public and affirmatively voted on? There must have been a provision somewhere.
But we're not
for-
talking, are you talking about the Hogtown thing?
Yeah, well, that's the same thing. We're talking about an initiative here.
Well,
Well,
that's a charter
an
initiative.
example.
yeah, that's a charter initiative.
Well,
That's
what are
just
you
a-
talking about?
I'm
We're a charter review committee.
No.
So this initiative would be a.
For anything.
ordinance. So it wouldn't go into the charter, it would be like a citizen
Oh, write a
ordinance
letter
that
to
could.
the editor. I mean, no.
Those work, those do work actually.
Okay, I follow you now.
Okay.
I thought we were talking a
So
charter.
this is a way of doing
All right,
something that's
no,
not
that's
permanent, like the Hogtown Creek was the example
We all
of what we
need it.
don't
That-
want.
Right,
Because if the Hogtown Creek passed and it was an ordinance, they would have repealed that by now.
Yeah.
right.
Well, but in the interest of not making this a document without meaning, hello.
Okay, so,
So I think that what we would need would be a motion to not include this specific charter, but to direct Mr. Tattersall to come back with broad language that could go in there that would direct the commission for a process to have referendums that could be amended or appealed. Mr. Blount?
Do none of these four, I see 4 devices online, 5, could pull up the county charter this moment and see what the language is.
I mean, I think I have it in here, but the county charter is
Get
also,
it done.
I could also bring it back to the next meeting so we can move on with
Yeah,
the agenda item.
right.
Does that sound? I mean, I could also look at the part.
I'm not in charge, I just thought it was a suggestion to consider.
Only.
I thought about that, Patty. I'm bad at multitasking.
I'll bring it back next meeting.
I think that's fine.
That's
It's-
okay.
Do we need a vote or anything to?
Well, that's what I said, I do think we need a motion, well, we could just table it, but the idea is not to include it as part of the charter recommendations, other than to have it as a broad statement with language directing the commission. Can I make a motion? That's my motion, directing the
Well,
commission.
I think that sounds a little confusing, though. I think we're still proposing putting something in the charter, correct? Just broader than not
Right.
prescriptive. Right.
Well, again, I asked the question, then how did this thing get before us? Obviously, there's some mechanism.
Suggesting the
That's a
idea,
charter.
but not these
There's
words.
a
Charter
mechanism.
amendment.
We were just talking charter, weren't we?
But we're talking about the ordinance, like developing a process for citizens to do ordinances.
Yeah, so they don't have to do charters in order to get something in a citizen, whatever
Well,
passed.
maybe, well, I mean, yeah, I take your point, but I don't know that that's anything we need to do here.
So you're suggesting the
I mean, I
idea,
disagree
but not
with you.
these words.
Exactly.
So it
Not
would-
as detailed.
Why don't we can skip over this, and if you can find it, we can come back to it if we have time at the end of the meeting. If not, you can come back at the next meeting.
Okay.
So we don't have to sit here while everybody's looking through their... Okay. Does that mean to vote? No. All right, so the next one is number
Charter amendments.
9, charter amendments.
Madam
And
Chair, can I say? This one, we wanted to increase from 15 to 20%.
10 to 20.
Sorry, 10 to 20% to make it much more appealing to do a citizen initiative as opposed to a citizen charter. Which is, I think, the only charters that I've been around for have been the one about bathrooms and stuff. And that really shouldn't have been in there, and that shouldn't have been something that was so easy to get on the ballot. You know?
but at the same time, when we tried to do the moving city elections, collecting signatures for moving city elections into corresponding with the fall or the August elections, that reaching that 10% was
Difficult, yeah.
that was difficult. So, I think it depends. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on how organized the citizens or constituency group is that wants to push something forward. Having been around for both, as well as the one that changed the charter to prevent the paving of, surfaces and conservation areas that we're going to be discussing later. I'm not sure I'm for changing it to make it harder, because I think it is already hard.
I don't disagree. I think it's already hard, but I want to make it even harder and then have an easier process for, or similar process for initiatives, so that those are doable. And the parallel that I see is what is happening in Tallahassee right now, where they're making it harder and harder and harder. They're saying, like, in order to change the state constitution, it has to be voted on twice now. It needs 50% of congressional districts, not just however 10% or whatever it is. They're trying to make it harder, which in the argument is that, pig pens don't deserve to be in our constitution, and they're not wrong, but there's no other initiative. There's no other mechanism for citizens to directly engage in democracy that way. We have representative democracy, which is great, but so that's the idea, is increasing that, and then to make this document harder to change, the charter, and then making ordinances something that's actually the avenue for doing these things that should be ordinances and not changes to the charter.
Yeah, well, I think, now I haven't done an analysis of Florida constitutional amendments that have gotten onto a ballot, let alone passed.
185.
But I think most of the ones that we generally find objectionable are ones that the state legislature has put on.
I agree.
Unless they're, restricting that process, which they're not, they're trying to restrict our process. They're trying to crush our voice.
No, this is very true. There's been 35 citizen-initiated constitutional amendments that have gotten on the ballot and passed. Some of them have been good, the felon rights restoration. Some of them have been bad, marriage, defining marriage system between a man and a woman. So there's been 35 of the 185 that have gone through, most of which have been through the legislature. And I don't disagree with that. If there was a process for us to pass a state bill or something like this, that would be much more preferable. But there's not, and we've done it 35 times since 1998. Or something like that.
Okay, Colleen?
In the statements that were just made, we heard some of the legislature's behavior described as crushing our voice. So why is this not crushing the voice?
We're creating the conversation between the one we just had and the one we're having right now are really the same conversation. So while we're increasing the threshold from 10 to 20% for charter, we're creating a process for ordinances that is much easier to do. So an ordinance isn't going to be in the charter. So like right now, we're going to talk a little bit about the Hogtown Creek stuff. That's been in the charter, and we can't get rid of it except for by voting on it in the charter. Meanwhile, if this was an initiative, there's been so many ordinances that have been repealed, changed, modified. I mean, we've modified the human rights ordinance, God, I think a dozen times at this point, which is good, because that's where it should live, enabling change.
I'm all for adding to people's voice by having that process for legislation for ordinances. That's not what I was referring to at all. I'm talking about raising the other threshold. I don't see it as any less voice crushing than what was just referred to by the state, preempting ordinance. The existing process should be left as it is and add on the process to petitions for ordinance.
So if there's a process that's a charter and a initiative,
then we can trust the people to have the wisdom to choose and the right to make the choice.
So, and if they're the same, and you have to get the same amount of signatures for both of them, then why would you choose to not permanently enshrine it in the charter as opposed to doing a citizen initiative that is like an ordinance?
Well, people have a lot of good reasons to choose. Fighting for an ordinance is probably going to be less of a scrap than fighting for changing the charter. And people will probably take the lower road just not to lift as far.
Well, if it costs the same amount, you know, money-wise, effort-wise, and everything like this, I think that they would do it. And to change the Constitution of the United States is a lot harder than passing a bill or something like this. To change a charter, I think, should be a little bit harder than passing a bill, passing a citizen initiative. I mean, I think it just means something is such a heavier thing to do.
I get that you're saying that. I just don't agree.
Okay.
And I still think that that's not trusting the people to have enough sense to decide which way to take. They can decide that. They're just as competent to figure out the difference as you are.
I didn't say they weren't as competent. I mean, I'm the one proposing that we create a process for them to initiate citizen ordinances. You know, like that is entrusting the people for direct democracy. But all I'm saying is, if one process is 15%, and then say another process is 15%, then I mean, I would love to have a citizen initiative charter that says that every city worker is paid $15 an hour starting immediately, and it's in the charter, and that's nothing can change with that. It's like this because that is my politic, and I think that should happen. But if I take a step back, I don't think that's actually good governance.
But then you'd be smart enough to know that having to deal with that for 10 years means they're going to be behind because that 15 has to advance, and you make it you go for an ordinance instead, so the commission can update it.
Does anybody else, before this just becomes a debate, Mr. Brown, Mr. Tattersall, does anybody else have a viewpoint on this?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there a distinct defined difference between a charter amendment or term statement and an ordinance?
Yes.
Yeah.
So aren't we talking about two different things, even though they're both essentially potentially addressing the same thing? And if that's the case, I think the arguments of both Mr. Tattersall and Mr. Blunt are there. I think they're just playing with the same water, for lack of a better description.
Yes, Donna.
But
Well,
can't have
Donna,
one
wait,
before the
well,
other.
Donna, and then you can go.
Okay, a couple of things.
sorry.
I'm going to sound like a conservative here,
Oh.
but I have a lot of respect for the distinction between basic governing documents and statutory changes. Okay? And I think, okay, so I actually favor making it a little harder to change the charter if we're going to have an initiative process where the citizens can do that. And I favor that for simply the reason that when you have basic governing documents, every 10 years is enough time to reconsider fundamental changes.
Well, and
that's what we should do.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is that if you look at the history of the ordinances, what you'll see is the people have a tendency to go for statutory issues, and special interests have a tendency to go for charter changes so they can embed whatever it is. And that essentially was what you were saying as a representative of labor. You'd really like it to embed that in. Other special interests feel exactly the same way, and that's part of the reason I kind of favor raising the number. I wouldn't if we weren't proposing a citizen initiative.
And I think that's the important distinction, because the citizen initiative was not in the charter. This was already in the charter, just at 10%, so all we're doing is increasing it to 20. I mean, it's existing currently in our charter. All right, we're ready.
I guess we need to,
Well, Mr. Kelly?
Well,
We
I've got
need
a
at
comment.
least one
Barry, I'm
right?
sorry.
Some other Irish guy.
Same kind.
Well, I was reading, and it might be beneficial to read again for all of us, the first paragraph in the charter amendments. It's petition, an amendment may be proposed by petition signed by 10%, and we'll talk at 14 perhaps, of the registered voters of the city, or by an ordinance adopted by 4/5 of the membership of the commission. The commission shall place the proposed amendment to a vote of the electors of the general election, and one more than half, and so forth. So, I mean, the only, I'm not, we're not proposing anything here that would be different, I don't believe, than is already in here, except for the percentage of voters required, because you are not, I'm given to understand, not proposing that we allow something in the charter that would allow the commission to pass an ordinance, because obviously they already have that authority. So I think we can move on personally, unless you want to change the 10 to 15, or whatever.
Well, I think that's still what we're
He's
discussing.
changing it
That's still
to
what we're
20.
discussing.
He wants to change it to
Well,
20% is what
So
he's
if someone wants 15, they can put that on the table, but I
We
think
flew
we're
right by
ready
that
to,
discussion,
I think
though.
we're ready to
That
vote
would
on that piece. And I think
Yeah.
we're going to come back to the language about the
The
citizen
initiative,
initiative
yes.
process. But I think we're ready to vote on
Yes.
whether we want to move this from 10 to 20, or if someone wants to put out
Is there a
15,
motion on the
now's
table?
the time.
I think we're in discussion, but I guess there's no motion to
There's no
discuss.
motion.
So it's a free.
Would somebody like to
Yeah, I
make a
think- Yeah, I
motion?
think you need to make a motion if you want to make a motion.
I can't get a sense for everyone's feeling on.
Well,
how
that,
to
we'll
vote.
find out when we vote.
That's why we make a
I
motion.
move that we increase the citizen charter initiative from 10% to 20%.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I think it's a good idea.
And then we'll do it by show of hands. All in favor? Aye? Opposed? Ayes have it. And again, this goes to the commission and it goes to the voters.
Yeah.
So, we all don't have to,
It's a
right?
good process.
Yes. All right, number 10.
Did you put another number out?
Amend 5.0 disposal of utilities as follows. And then you can see the staff comments. And Susan, I will put this on you since this was your,
Yeah,
Baby.
so, right, so if I recall, the first discussion we had about this, and it's kind of in the synopsis that is in the document, we did two things. Number one, we wanted to add wastewater, reclaimed water, Rubicon, water production or distribution facilities. And then the future utility-related enterprises or intellectual processes. And that seems to be what the sticking point was with our city attorney's office, as well as the phrase, so as to materially reduce the capacity of the city to produce or distribute, blah, blah, blah. And so in putting this forward, what I was trying to do was to, and it's almost pertinent to the discussions we've just had on the last two items, is what we don't want to see happen is for the situation to be where, whether it's a commission or anybody else, come in and say, oh, we're going to do this with GRU, and because the language in the city charter is not really specific, that they can, sell off parts of GRU without it going to the voters. And so that was my concern. That's what motivated me to do this, was really to more lock in and protect the utility and all of its enterprises that we have under GRU. But the feeling that I was getting from the city attorney's office was that that's not the case. And so I would kind of ask for further clarification or, talk me off the ledge.
What's not the case?
So the first thing was, what the phrase that bothered me was, it says, the commission may not in any manner dispose of or agree to dispose of, so on and so forth,
City's electrical.
so as to materially reduce the capacity of the city. And to me, that materially reduce the capacity of the city is open to interpretation. So for example, if Duke Energy came in and said, we're going to give you X billion of dollars for your energy, your power generation, but we're going to still have a contract with you so that you, the city of Gainesville, can still deliver electric services.
Maybe the distribution center.
Right, so that's kind of, because, we know that these investor-owned utilities, that's what they want to do. They want to buy up municipal utilities. It's happening all over Florida, it's happening all over the country. And so what my motivation for this, and this is where I'm kind of looking for everybody else's input, city attorneys, again, talking me off the ledge, is this language that currently exists in the charter, is it sufficient to protect against that? Or is there some other language that we need to entertain that would, put up a real firewall so that that doesn't happen? So that was one part. The other part was, in the current city charter language, it doesn't say anything about group home. So, we wanted to add that. So there's two things going on right now.
And to add to that, I want to say too, I see this all the time in state law, and we always see it in case law, is we're behind the curve when we're talking about intellectual property and that realm, and it didn't seem that our charter adequately addressed it. So if we're talking about non-tangible assets such as intellectual property, we may want to address that in the charter before any of that is disposed of in any way, shape, or form. And that's all, I think, when I added before, was trying to accomplish is that newer world that's starting to emerge, especially when we start talking about privacy and customer data. Yeah, we have ordinances that address that, but if it's something that's not there yet, we want to make sure it's covered.
Well, and I think too, again, in the staff concerns, it's saying two things. We forgot the gas utility, and it was not, I don't think that was left out intentionally, it was just an oversight, the last line. And secondly, it's saying that, and I think Mr. Cohen had brought this question up, it would require a referendum vote for even minor business transactions. Like, I want to sell this 1998 truck, those,
Which is not the intent.
which is not the intent, but we don't.
Right.
We don't want
So
to.
how do is there a way to accomplish what Ms. Bodger intention is without these
So,
concerns?
if I may address that specifically, we'll address that very, very much like we address the sale of surplus property. Right now, which other government are the utility, for that matter. We have a process in place to sell or otherwise dispose of surplus vehicles, surplus desks,
Sure.
chairs, cabinets.
Sure.
So it's not, that's,
Well, there's, in those processes, if it reaches a certain dollar amount, you got to get commissioner approval
precisely.
before you can get rid of it. So
Yeah,
it depends
precisely.
on how much the value of that is. I think this charter thing is specific to, what would cripple GRU's ability
The production.
for energy production, water, waste, those types of things.
So Jorge, wasn't your suggestion intellectual process?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that encapsulates what we're
I don't know
talking
if
about.
processes and property,
Yeah.
maybe that's a legal question, but that's what, there's value in that. I mean, we all know about cryptocurrency. Okay, I don't
I
know,
still don't
GRU
understand
invested cryptocurrency, but if something like that were to come up at some
Yeah.
point, that's intellectual property, there's no tangible, to put my fingers on it type of thing. That's what I was trying to accomplish with that.
And somehow we did forget the gas utility. How did that
Yeah,
happen?
I know.
Yeah, it's just an oversight.
Yeah.
So does the city attorney have any direction for this commission?
The analysis was done by the charter officers, not by my office.
Right.
Solely, and I believe Mr. Borski is still here, but certainly to Member Botcher's question, the current language in the charter, so as to materially reduce the capacity. In looking back at the history of this, it looked like when this was placed in the charter, it was so that the city wouldn't just sell off its utilities, its what's the word that the charter officers use? It's essential utility services, water, services. So what would happen during my time with the city, there hasn't been a time that it's gotten, the commission has been entertaining doing something that would trigger that, but if they did, it would be up to that then sitting commission and the charter officers to do an analysis of, does this materially reduce the capacity? So there would be an analysis, it would be part of a very public process, or people can weigh in on that. But I think a lot of the concern was around the utilities' ability, if you amended it in the way that you all initially proposed, to do more routine business transactions.
Well, if I may, maybe we should elaborate on that, but my concern and my support for this and the other amendment bringing the management of the utility under general government is because, well, at least the last 25 years that I've been here, people have seen the GRU, as you say, the company. People see the utility as a company and not as part of local government. They may, when it's explained and put before them, I think, well, of course it's a part of the city. Yeah, we understand. Yeah. But it's seen as a company and disposable in that sense. And I think that's what, I personally think that's what we would like to obviate in the future, so that people don't see it as something separate and apart from the provision of general government services.
Mr. Blount, and then,
What is the definition of essential services?
Yeah, that's precisely right. Yeah.
I really want to know, what's up, what are they referring to? What's not essential to staff now?
No.
What are not essential services?
do you want to address it, or?
I think that's a legal question.
Exactly.
Ask your mom, ask your dad.
Would you legally would you like to be legally unable to flush your toilet or turn on your lights? I mean, I don't see, which of these are not essential? If you're in a city, you gotta have all these.
Code of law. You have to have the authority.
Well, is there did we get an answer to that, or?
The word essential is not used in the charter. That was part of the charter officers. and
Oh.
That's enough.
Oh, I'm
they were
sorry.
pointing out that the original charter language seemed to only encompass essential services. I think likely wastewater wasn't included, although certainly it would seem to be an essential service because there's not a big, in talking with the general manager of utilities, there's not a big market for takeovers of wastewater utilities. So,
Right.
Same thing with RUCOM, although certainly it provides valuable services, but I know that it operates in not so profitable of a, and so it may be something that the city. Not profitable at all.
But may I-
So-
Well, wait, Ms. Chestnut, when she's done.
So that might be
Are
one
you
that
done?
the city might.
I was just, in my
Wait, she's
professional
next, though.
history,
Okay.
the water was a hot commodity 40 years ago. Private acquisition of utilities.
I just wondered if anyone would have the appetite to go back to number 7, 3.06.
Well, I think,
Okay, well, we can finish this.
Yeah.
I think we'd
But
have
you're
to vote.
seeing, okay, well, no, I mean, she might be making a connection.
Yeah, but I guess I
Say,
would,
why don't you finish your thought?
Oh, I just missed this, but I just have a very strong feeling about this issue, so.
Right, but I think we need to finish.
I know, that's why I'm backing out, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
so just to circle back to this one, I guess it's the opinion of the city attorney that the current language, it protects us from sell-offs.
Well, and again,
Or
it's
address
not,
it.
So-
the charter officers did the analysis.
So what I would like to know is, in this analysis, it says, which both deletes a material determination and adds utility services functions that are not essential services as unworkable. It would require a referendum vote for even minor business transactions. Explain that to us, because currently, the way it currently sits in words, you're making the same argument as it currently words, because I don't think we fundamentally changed the wording to restrict the ability to get rid of minor business transactions.
So I think we have two things. I think we would need Mr. Berlowski to comment on that, because that is part of the staff analysis. I guess my question for Ms. Shalley was, when you're talking about, it, as to materially reduce the capacity. And that, responding to Ms. Botcher's original intent. This amendment. So a couple separate things going on.
And I think they're kind of related, because if you take away, so right now, that is a protection, that's a safeguard, but it says materially reduce. So someone's going to have to determine,
also a
does this
loophole.
transaction, if we carried it out, materially reduce the ability of the utility? If it doesn't, then it allows for the more minor and routine business transactions to go on. But if you take that language out, then the charter will simply read, the commission may not in any manner dispose of or agree to dispose of any of the following things. So
Thank you.
it makes it much more stringent.
Thank you for that
So leaving
clarification.
materially reduce wording in there alleviates the unworkable part of it, but yet still encapsulates what we're trying to be more inclusive of in our intent.
It preserves the commission's loophole. When they decide to move pieces around, they can say, oh, this doesn't reduce the capacity, and they can do it. It's their loophole, and they don't want to keep their
Well,
loophole.
I think that's what we're asking staff is that a legal loophole, or would that stop that from occurring? I know we have processes to get this stuff, so.
Well, my concern with this is we have units that will hit their retirement dates. We're not talking about a transaction where there's a sale, we're talking about a disposal. So you could have Deer Haven 1, which is one of our oldest plants, that is subject for retirement in 2023. That if you make the change you're talking about, you have to go to referendum before you can retire. That's just not workable. I don't know any utility that functions that way. So I don't know what you've gotten by making that change in the operations of business. There are normal retirements, there are changes, but we always try to maintain the capacity of our system. That's what we do. We're there to maintain the delivery of essential services, we call them necessities of life for the community. So I don't think that's in question. I mean, at some point we're also going to be looking at the coal plant. There's going to have to be arrangements made that can continue the capacity of the utility to provide that. Nobody's going to buy the coal plant. Nobody's going to buy the Deer Haven 1 facility. I mean, what you're talking about here is, Mrs. Botcher talks about graders, if you will, corporate graders that are out there. They would be buying customers. This goes toward the organization as a whole. This goes toward the capacity of the system. So operationally, I'm fine with the way it's written in the charter now. That's why I was saying, legally, it's up to the city attorney to decide whether there's any material change from that. So I'm comfortable with the materiality part.
Mr. Blount?
The examples we heard are absolutely projectable. If you know the year, then you go to referendum 3 years ahead. It's just another
true.
wheel to turn.
That's not true. These things are analyzed. It's just like Kelly over here, we're doing some work on it. You do some structural, electrical work on it and find out that there is a period of time in which you can make a change. That's what we project it to be. That's why we have outages on a regular basis. That's why we have professional work being done to decide what has to be done. You can't plan that in that kind of a fashion. This is not legislative, it's operational.
Well, you just told us a year. I was just responding to what was said.
Right, but I mean, again, if you go to referendum and this is something that's operationally what needs to be done, and you have voters that don't understand, and then what are you going to do with the Deer Haven 1 plant? The voters say, oh, no, we don't want to get rid of it. I mean, I think I totally understand what you're saying. This is operational. There's a difference. I mean, Ms. Botcher, this is your...
Right. So
I was fine with it the way it was.
I have tremendous respect for the city attorney's office, and certainly for Mr. Bilarski as well. And if both are comfortable with, if you look on the document where it's stricken out, with keeping that in, and based upon their professional opinions and many years of service in the industry, that I am comfortable not striking it out.
Sure, but it begs the question, do we need to move this forward at all to make these additional
think-
changes?
I think what
wastewater
we wanted
and-
to do is we wanted to add,
Broaden it.
yeah, we wanted to add those other things, and yes, gas utility was an oversight leaving that out, that should be in there as well. And so I think that's,
for
the second part of
recently.
the conversation.
Well, and I think to Mr. Castro, the intellectual processes, I don't know if there's a better word, but, we never know what, new technology or is going to come. So leave that, so the consensus right now, I understand correctly, is to unstrike the strike through.
Right.
And then we still want to add the underline plus natural gas.
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to make a motion.
Okay, but do you think that's more acceptable, Mr. Gillen, or honestly? Okay.
I think Ms. Shelley has.
Shall I?
The one thing that the charters talked about, without further definition, keeping in the actual systems that exist, but the wording future utility-related enterprises or intellectual processes, I don't think the charters were of the opinion that that was meaningful or would be understood. So,
Well, we're open to suggestion, I guess.
But intellectual property cover it, Ed,
As opposed to processes?
instead of processes?
I think this is about the physical plants and the utility operations,
Yeah,
not
but the way things are going, there may be intellectual property, AI, whatever, in the next 10 years that is essential to running these systems that I'm trying to protect.
I understand where you're going with that. I'm not sure how that would hold into the definition. I appreciate where you're going. I don't want to stretch too far. That's my personal opinion. I wouldn't want to stretch too far to make it undefinable or ambiguous. Do you have an idea with AI?
I see examples all the time where intellectual property is stolen, sold off, misused, that we are investigating in a variety of different ways. How that affects the utility, more so GRUCOM in the transmission and reception of data and its systems. We really don't know where that's going to go. We know it exists. I'm just trying to put language in there to protect it.
Right.
And that's why, and we were talking more on the GRUCOM end of things than we were power production and all of that.
Okay.
And trying to keep that in that umbrella.
When you say that, I understand a little bit better because, most all the things that exist on the traditional utility side, there's not a lot of intellectual property there that's not outside of good utility practice, right? So we're talking about GRUCOM, I could understand the inclusion of that in the definition. I appreciate that.
Mr. Blount?
It seems to me it makes a lot of sense to anticipate potential unknown future products and processes because this economy has no future without continuing innovation. I mean, it's dependent totally on continuing innovation. So to not be prepared to have something flexible enough to encompass yet unknown innovations, it's kind of a time-locked statement.
Ms. Botcher, do you want to propose?
So I think we should divide this up. I will make a motion that we unstrike the phrase, quote, so as to materially reduce the capacity of the city to produce or distribute electrical energy or water. Unstrike that. So that's my motion.
I'll second.
Are we going to change?
I think we should do
Oh,
that separate.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll get to that
We'll
next.
get to that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Colley? No? Mr. Blount? You're no? I just want to make sure for the record, the clerk has that.
Okay, and so, Inspector Campos wants to add in, do you want to do the, do you want to make a motion to take
so-
care of what we were adding in?
I would like to make a motion to change the wording of future utility-related enterprises or intellectual processes to intellectual property.
And add in natural gas?
Yes, but for the intellectual property part, I'll just leave it at that. I had a question, but I'll mull it over later. And add the natural gas distribution system or related, just however.
So do we
Whatever
want the
that
wording
term
to
is.
say, you know, where it starts with the underlined wastewater, natural gas, gas utility, reclaimed water, GRUCOM, and then future utility-related
Well,
enterprises?
or water production or
Or
distribution.
water, right, well, that was
Well, the
originally.
future-related enterprises and electronic processes I want to be replaced with
Just
intellectual property.
Right.
Okay, all right, so let's go through that again. So we wanted to read wastewater, gas utility, reclaimed water, GRUCOM, or water production or distribution facilities, or intellectual property. Did I get that right?
I think
Yes.
Yes, yes. So that's the motion.
Second? Oh, I made a motion.
Yeah. Well, I'll second
You want to
it,
make
but
the motion and
I
second
seconded
it?
it again.
I'll second it, but I have a question. Is GRUCOM too specific? Should we be talking, I don't know what, I mean, is it the B cable we're talking about? or-
IPO?
Well, so,
or
IPO?
Wi-Fi?
Isn't it, wouldn't that be under?
so GRUCOM,
We're talking about physical versus,
yeah, so GRUCOM owns, well, we said GRUCOM, but I think where GRUCOM is kind of like, you have gas transmission lines, but we're not getting that specific. GRUCOM owns the fiber
Yeah, fiber.
and wireless equipment. We're not getting that. So I think anything that falls under
Yeah.
GRUCOM would be covered. And I see Ed shaking his head yes over there, so.
Create a problem that doesn't exist.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, yeah, can I don't know if you put the assets of GroupCom or, because they also own the radio management portion as part of that. You are right, there are some assets, they also, sell the rights to cell towers. So that, GroupCom has a host of assets that are important to the city of Gainesville.
Right.
Maybe not from a P&L perspective, but from, the essentials of life perspective. So I think you have to capture that somehow.
So by simply stating
be under
GRUCOM,
GRUCOM?
they wouldn't cover it? Because we say electrical production, but we don't say how. So I think if we just say GRUCOM, we're not saying what
Yeah.
in GRUCOM. But if it significantly reduces the ability to produce, right,
Telecommunication facilities and services? But that might not even be enough.
I think-
might even be an old
term.
term.
Oh, come on now.
I understand.
Okay.
Come from a guy whose dad worked for the phone company his whole life, so.
All right, any other discussion?
And put-
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right,
I
now,
have one more.
huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to number 11. Okay, I think this is a
Yeah,
no-brainer.
Mr. Cohen was the
Yeah.
spear of this first one.
Where'd it go?
Yeah, he did.
Explain.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He'd leave it.
Well, I think we all understood,
We all agree.
we all agreed on,
Let the voters have another
The
whack
voters
at
have
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and as a cautionary, I'm not sure what the terms are, but we should not fall prey to somebody who said you're allowing asphalt in the floodplain. I'm not sure how to phrase it, but whether it's improved surfaces, and we'll look for maybe some suggested wordsmithing, but that'll be, somebody reminded me, that'll be the first thing you see, they want to allow.
And,
Well,
you know,
asphalt
quite
making
honestly,
asphalt
that
before.
whole discussion will come when this is on the ballot.
Oh, yeah.
You want to say yes or no.
Precisely.
That's not our
Right.
position
No, you're
to
right.
make those
Precisely.
discussions pro or con.
Somebody will
Yeah.
say, though, why are you, what are you doing this for?
Oh, yeah, a lot of those
Language that
old,
was used at
old,
the time.
you know, fears are going to resurface,
Right.
maybe, to use a term.
People wondering into their
But I don't, you know, again, I don't think that we need to worry too much about it.
I'll make the motion, in absentia of Mr. Cohen. Oh, excuse me.
No, I was supposed to make a motion.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Crystal.
That's
You
okay.
do it. No, no,
Make a
you do
motion
it.
that we move this
I've
forward.
talked too much already.
Second.
Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so Ms. Chestnut would like to revisit number 7 for discussion. What is the, yeah, we would have to vote to reopen it if we felt that.
Where did it end last
necessary.
time, if I might ask?
Huh?
How did it end last time? I don't know.
We,
I think it was like 8 to...
We voted in-
one.
Let me look at the
I don't
minutes.
recall
Yeah.
it.
What was the vote?
We have to look at the minutes.
There was
the
something that
clerk,
voted
do you know what
against.
the vote was? She's.
I got the minutes.
Aaron Fisher no show 7-2, Henry Cohen opposed.
Correct, yeah, that sounds right.
In June.
And how many were absent?
1,
I wasn't here.
2. 2 were
I
absent.
think
Yeah.
2 were absent, so it was 7 to 2.
Commissioner Henry, were you here?
Yes.
I was absent.
You were absent
I
also?
think I was as well.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner, if memory serves me correctly, somebody can look at the record, but
Ma'am.
If I might, you all don't have to, you're going to be taking this up again.
Yeah, that's
Because
true.
we drafted the ordinance
Yeah.
to carry this out, so that's.
Okay.
item
Oh,
1,
Yeah,
2,
that's-
okay, so, oh,
3,
okay.
4, 5.
Gotcha, thank you, thank you.
It's at least
All right,
two
so we'll just move on to the next, it'll come up in the
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah, we're gonna, yeah.
All right, okay, let's move on, because we're running out of time again, and we do know we do have a second, we have another meeting scheduled, so, and obviously we're gonna need it. So next is 191050, proposed charter amendment to require appointment of a city attorney. I don't have the,
I think that was a series of things that we were saying, instead of will appoint versus shall.
Oh, yes.
That's
Yes.
just, you know, making language consistent across
Yes.
charters.
yes. So that shouldn't really require,
That was the memo.
Well, I guess it's more than scrivener error, but,
well, I guess that is the next 3 agenda items.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
basically changing that to may to shall.
551, and
well, we can just go through, let's vote on 191050. If there's no discussion or anything, take a motion to approve as presented by,
Motion to
Move
approve as
approval.
presented.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And then 191051, I would just, again, we would just cross out clerk of commission and
Yep,
city
that's
clerk,
correct.
wherever,
Approval?
And shall, yeah, shall appoint.
Right.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have 191052, proposed charter.
Approval?
Second.
The auditor?
Mhm. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. If anybody's opposed, let me know. All right, now we have 191053, proposed charter amendment to extend the term limits of the mayor and city commissioners. And again,
Move approval. That's what we talked about the whole
I
time.
agree.
Yeah.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay.
How many they also?
2 nays, did you get
No,
that? Ms.
3
Moore?
nays.
3 nays.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
Henry Blunt.
Okay, 191054.
this is.
This
Okay,
is
this is the one.
Okay, proposed charter amendment to delete the charter office of the general manager for utilities, thus transferring administrative authority over the city's utility system to the city manager.
Okay, I'm not in support of this, and I'd like to make a motion that, for discussion, that we maintain the the general manager for utilities as a charter officer of the city commission.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Oh, and I second it.
Thank you.
We discussed it, so feel, you know. I mean, do you have specific things you want to address?
Yeah.
Well, let
Oh,
Cynthia
okay.
go, and then you can go next.
Right. I'm concerned in putting this department under the city manager, and we end up with city managers that do not have the experience and the expertise to run the utilities. We're putting the resources, the most important resource of the city at risk. I don't know what this city manager's experience is with utilities, and I don't know what it would be with someone in the future. But this seems a bit punitive. You keep all of the other charter officers, and this is the only charter officer that is singled out, and it's the, I think, the most important one in terms of our resources. So I just have concerns. I'm thinking back over my over 40 years in this community, and I'm thinking back to city managers. I cannot recall one of them, I may be wrong, that had experience in utilities and would be able to, I think, manage the resources of the citizens.
Mr. Henry?
Yeah. If you all would allow me, I'd like you to go back to the 1900890, because I want to read Appendix A, which is a response from the general manager, because he makes to me some valid points that I think we should pay attention to.
That's the attachment.
It's a memorandum
Oh.
from,
Attachment A? Is that?
Attachment A, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't say attachment A?
No, you didn't.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
Just trying to-
And it's entitled General Manager's Response to CRC Proposed Amendment, under which the General Manager of Utilities would be removed as a charter officer of the city. And he gives an introduction of his background, but I want to start at my viewpoint. And he talks about, he shares the general manager's independence is no less important or critical to the city than having an independent city auditor, city attorney, or equal opportunity director, in which I agree. Then he goes on to say this: maintaining independence is a hallmark of good government. It is important for commissioners to be able to hear the legal, accounting, and business side of decisions from different charter officers who have reached a decision, not because they all work for one boss, but because they have worked diligently toward the right solution, asking questions, testing their theories, and challenging one another. What I have said earlier is that having the charter officers really puts forth in our government a system of checks and balances. And having the independent charter officers, as is stated in the general manager's appendix here, or his statements, it does allow for each charter officer to challenge the other. My concern is that if we move the general manager under the city manager, there is a possibility that the check and balance will be compromised. Not to say or to disparage the integrity of either one, but what I'm saying, that we are introducing a variable that possibly could happen. Okay, let me go on if you don't mind. Okay, general manager as a charter officer better serves the complexities of the utility. The complexities in both operational functions and financial areas of the utility cannot be overstated. A five-system utility represents a significant portion of overall city government operations and must be allowed to operate with the utmost safety and reliability of its infrastructure. The utility's financial health must be supported and protected in order to support overall city operations in what is truly a symbiotic relationship. Reducing the role of the general manager to a subordinate of the city manager would have the unintended consequences of making GRU compete for resources across the city based not on utility best practices such as life cycle management of assets, but on the annual needs of the city manager. Managing and maintaining assets with useful lives for up to 50 years should not be marginalized this way.
Mr. Henry, I don't mean to
Okay,
interrupt.
all right,
but-
okay, all
but
right, but
we
my-
all have this, and we've all read it.
Yeah,
so
but,
if you
okay,
wanna-
all right, but my point
Okay.
It's
is,
best to just let the
Okay.
conversation go.
Okay.
my concern, again, is number one, the check and balance that we currently have in our governmental system. And I'm saying moving the general manager of utilities under the city manager compromises that system. And as we talked about this, one of the main things we said, well, Tallahassee has it. Yeah, well, Tallahassee does. But Tallahassee is not Gainesville. Yes, it does have a similar governmental structure, but are we doing it just because Tallahassee has it and they have a similar governmental structure? To me, there should be more substance to moving the general manager of utilities under the city manager. And quite frankly, I haven't really heard a very substantial argument as to why that should be done. And furthermore, I felt that one of our governmental commissioners was somewhat out of place being here and giving his opinion to the Charter Review Commission as to what his preference was when he is going to make the decision on our decision as well. But that's my argument. So, and I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Blount and then Ms. Donna.
It's called a citizen-owned utility. And I can tell you, perception around a lot of the city is that GRU is a private kingdom and it's completely autonomous and it calls its shots and tells the city what to do. The charter position for the manager ends and it goes under the city manager, and right here it tells the map of what happens next. The city manager decides how to staff the city's utility system. And in real time, in real names, Mr. Feldman and Mr. Bielowski sit down and go over his contract and eliminate every reference to charter duty, and every decision point in there refers up to the city manager, and we still have expert management, and they leave his salary the same unless he just wants to go somewhere else, and Mr. Feldman will find another expert, but he'll staff it. That's not a problem. That's not an obstacle to me.
Ms. Donna.
I actually favor this, and I don't favor it for frivolous reasons. I favor it because of the overall political atmosphere of the state. And I would very much like to see essentially the opposite of what Commissioner Henry just said. I would like to see the hold of the city over the utility tightened in the face of the fact that Tallahassee would like to ratchet it right away from us. I didn't wake up one morning and go, ooh, let's get rid of the head of the utility as a charter officer. I've been watching what's happened in Tallahassee. I think that if the utility were under the control of the city manager, a great many of the arguments about the transfer and how that is worked out would be at least softened in a variety of ways. It's the people's utility, it's the city's utility. And right now, that is severely under attack. Municipal utilities are under attack all across the country. And I favor this because it's a clear signal that GRU belongs to the city, not the other way around. And that's just the way I feel about it.
Jorge?
I'll preface my statements with, I have nothing personally against any people in the position that they're currently in. I think that people that are there are doing a phenomenal job. I think, and again, I'm also a person who's trying to keep down a day job and know nothing about running a utility, so I'll just put that out there as well. However, to Commissioner Chestnut's comments about being in the community 40 years and not finding a city manager who has any utility experience, because of the way we're set up, we've never had a need to seek someone with that utility experience. So I don't know if there are some out there that have it, because there are cities that do have a utility that report to a city manager. So finding a city manager that has that experience is possible. But then I think in a meeting you weren't here, I think we referred to the county manager, that there are several people who report to the county manager that county manager has no experience. One is the health director for the county, reports to the county manager. That person's an MD. I'm sure there aren't very many county managers out there that have MD experience. So we can still facilitate finding the best qualified person to run the utility. Just because they report to the city manager doesn't mean their salary has to be below or whatnot. It's still, we're still looking for the best qualified person and to compensate them accordingly for their services. I've heard some things about the uncertainty of the current general manager's job and how that would work out. I totally understand that uncertainty because our decision here doesn't spell out how that would transpire. So I totally get that. And it was not my intent whatsoever to give undue stress to the person in that position based on this. But I think those things can be worked out. I think our current city manager is the type of person that's not going to, go, see you later. But at the same time, the commission may have some way in there. I think some of us had talked to a bunch of different folks, including some commissioners when we got into here, and one of the frustrations that I heard was there were too many charter officers. And we didn't talk about any one specific charter officer over another. There's just too many charter officers for them to manage. And the frequency in which the commissioners go in and out, in my 27 years in this community, have seen a clear issue with the city going in the right direction with everybody following along. So the city to survive needs to grow. It needs to grow not only in its population, but it needs to grow in the area in which it covers. And what are we talking about here? Annexation. We've never been able to get our annexation plan in the right direction. There's always something that seems to submarine it for one reason or another. And hopefully trying to pull all of these things together so that the city can succeed in the future by using the assets that it has available to, and to do that, you have to set it up to where you don't have two people that may be in opposition over that. So utility is an asset to the city. It's one of the gems that needs to be in congruence with where the city is going. Commissioner Henry talks about checks and balances. I agree with you in some aspects, but there's a lot of things about general government that the general utility manager has nothing to do with, and vice versa. So there's no checks and balances between those two positions when it comes to those things. But when, as a city, if we're going to move forward and we're going to have one plan and one vision, and we're going to use all of our assets to go in that direction, everybody's got to be on the board, and there can't be inner fighting going on there. And I think if we, bring down some of our charter officers, that may help accomplish that. And now I'll shut up.
Mr.
I
Pickens.
wholeheartedly endorse and would reiterate what Jorge just said. That's my motivation as well. And I don't think that designation as an assistant city manager is a reduction in position.
Bennett, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate, I thank you for articulating all of that. Member Kemp that was well said, and I completely agree with you and Member Waller. And I just want to reiterate, this is not a punitive measure. This is not personal, not punitive.
Well, let me.
And so just want to reiterate that.
Well, and that's the way, I saw, on some things on Facebook, and it was like, oh, no, I didn't mean that, like, we wanted to axe him. It was
Yeah.
just a different organizational structure, and I don't know if it was Mr. Eastman, who's not here today, but he had brought up the issue, over this type of conflict. And also the other thing I think that you had brought up, it's just like, if you're over the police chief or you're the fire chief, you don't know anything about those things either. And I think it was just an organizational change. And I think Mr. Tattersall, again, we've talked about it many times, and I think a couple times you two weren't here, so there were valid reasons. And I think one of yours was like there was no other city that had, was it, as
I'm sorry, there's no one in the city that way.
there was no other city that had them as a charter position. Wasn't you that brought it up, or was it Mr. Easton? One of you youngsters.
But I think that was anecdotal. I'm not sure.
But we're the
Right.
we're the exception
Right.
in this model.
Correct.
So other cities are doing what we're proposing to change to,
Yeah.
and they're doing it fine.
Right,
That was the point to
They
that.
hire the experts.
They hire the experts
Right.
in all the different departments.
right. Mr. Blount?
We keep bringing up checks and balances. That doesn't apply here. Utilities is not a co-equal branch of government.
Correct.
Checks and balances is about co-equal branches of government, so that just doesn't even apply here. And if we want to talk about...
It does apply.
If we, please let me finish. If we want to talk about a function being so special that it needs to be a charter, there is no other local government function more special than public safety. We ought to have a public safety charter rather than a utility charter if it's by how special it is. Instead of a police chief and a fire chief, it should be a public safety charter.
All right, we're not going to
I call
Ready to make
whatever
a
question.
motion.
Well, Ms.
Well,
Ms. Chestnut.
wait. I just want to say, please let us finish our thoughts. Please, are we going to meet until 6 o'clock?
Yes.
But I don't want to feel that I am being rushed through.
But she can make a motion, and second, we can still have discussion.
I have a motion on the floor.
It's been seconded.
It's been
Okay,
seconded.
so
Yeah,
I'll
we
call
are
the question.
discussing.
We are discussing the motion on the floor, Madam Chair.
Can we hear from the city attorney, because there's some things that have been said here that are just totally inaccurate? And I'm voicing on the city attorney, she's trying to raise her hand.
Oh,
All right, back to you, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm just concerned because I know last time when you all were discussing this, you were talking about that your intent was to put the general manager under the city manager. And when we drafted this and prepared the agenda item, there's no uncertainty about how this will be carried out, and I want to make sure that you all understand that. Right now, the general manager for utilities is a charter officer. When you delete that position, he works by employment. His employment is by contract with the city. His contract will be terminated. So Mr. Volarski will not have employment with the city anymore. Then it will be up to the city manager to determine how he wants to staff the utilities, what positions that he wants to create, and then he'll have to run processes to hire for those positions. So
Could you elaborate a little bit on that? That sounds a little excessive. Beyond the contract, and I gather, I'm not aware that this contract would be any different than most other leagues or anybody else's contract.
well, each of the charter officers, we're employed by contract
Right.
with the city commission to be a charter officer.
Right.
When that charter office no longer exists,
Right.
our contract will have to be terminated.
Well, yes, but not the, well, yes.
But the city does have options though, so if Mr. Feldman, and since he's a physician, he could do a direct hire for that position if he wishes.
Number one, the commission will have to determine, does Mr. Feldman have the qualifications to handle both, as you all spoke, both utilities and general government experience? And then whomever the city manager is at that time, will then determine what positions should be created to staff the utility, and they alone will be in charge of hiring for those processes.
I mean, you're not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like then what we would need to do, if it is the intent of this body or the majority of this body to move forward with this item, for us to include language for a transition. So for example, to say the current general manager will remain as the general manager for utilities for a period of, I mean, help me out here, you see where I'm going with this? That
Well-
is there a transition that we can put into this that would allay those fears? Because the last thing any of us wants is to give the impression that we're going to have this void at the head of GRU. That's not the intent of this.
Okay, you're next, Ms. Davis.
I was going to say something very similar to Susan.
Do you
like
want to go?
mechanism is-
Oh, when we get to the end, I just want to
Okay.
close out my
I
motion.
think the one way to manage this is to simply say, there's that language, I suppose, the general manager of utility be henceforth known as the assistant city manager for utilities, and
No, it was the contract.
charter,
The
yeah.
document.
Yeah, but I don't think the charter will
Yeah.
allow you
Okay.
to mandate that another charter
You're
create a
right,
position.
you're right.
Mr. Blount?
It tells you administrative authority of the city manager to determine how to staff. So obviously, he would need an interim immediately, and here sits an expert. So he can make an immediate offer, and it's up to him to decide to accept it. But, and if the city manager then does a national search, the interim will stand an obvious good shot.
Mr. Tattersall, did you have something or no?
I'm comfortable with this. I have faith in the city commission and the city manager to make appropriate decisions as, I mean, if it looks like this is something that's going to pass, I feel like they're not going to be flat-footed on this issue and would have contingency plans on day one. I mean, we're all in this room aware of this issue right now. I don't think anyone's going to forget about this as we move forward.
Ms.
Okay,
Chestnut?
all right, and I will share my opinion, and this is my opinion. It appears very punitive. That's number one. Number two, I'm concerned about, I don't think this will in any way stop Tallahassee from making their comments or their recommendations or their decisions. In fact, it may spur them on even more. Three, I'm just thinking that, I don't know, this is like you're asking the fox to guard the hen house here. Because, no, I want to tell you why. The Equal Opportunity Officer is responsible for the affirmative action program of the city. If that affirmative action officer was under the city manager who would have direct control over,
We're not talking about that.
no, I'm giving you an analogy. I'm giving you my opinion, Cynthia Moore Chestnut's opinion, if I could just finish it. If I could just finish it. When you ask that affirmative action officer to report on the inequities in the city manager's department for whom she would report to, it doesn't work. And that is where I see this problem, with the general utilities being under the city manager, with the city manager then manipulating that budget in any way she sees fit. You're putting the public's resources at a great disadvantage.
What's the disadvantage?
You have no accountability.
If I could,
You have no account, in my opinion, you have no accountability.
I actually want to, I think you're onto something with the EEO officer. At that point, that position would encompass the utilities of the city as well, water, sewer, gas, electric. Right now, it does not.
It does, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does. It doesn't, well, it doesn't have any.
No, I was just using that as an analogy, but because that's why it's good not to have the equal opportunity officer report to the city manager, because she wouldn't be able to report in an unbiased manner, or he would not perhaps.
Good.
So I think that equal opportunity, she uses this example. I think it's just a little bit different in that you're trying to put one plan and make it consistent throughout the whole city and all city government and all aspects of city government, which is what Ms. Marshall does now. And if a charter officer is not following the commission's goals, then that charter officer then reports to the commission that the other charter officer isn't following that. In this situation, other than the revenue transfer, where else does the general manager of utilities cross-check what the city manager does? I know you're talking about the budgets and all this, but other than that transfer, where else is that check and balance between the city manager and the general manager of utilities? And I know we're talking about a lot of money here, but we're also talking about a community that has very limited taxable land and has to be able to survive on its assets, which is part of the general revenue transfer. I know there's a lot of heartburn over that as to what happens. But knowing that, I think commissioners going through the budgetary process can ask questions of the manager directly of what's going on, where and whom and what, and bring that to the surface. And if they think something fishy's going on, take the appropriate measure if they need to. That's my position on it, and that's my lay of position on it.
Madam Clerk, can you repeat the motion and again, because I want to make sure I'm not doing like a negative vote type of situation.
The motion.
Your motion, you know your motion.
Yeah, my motion is to maintain the general manager of utilities as a charter officer. That's essentially the motion.
So basically take out.
Take out what you have here, yeah.
And I said second.
Right. Is everybody ready to vote? So to be clear, to leave it in as it stands, it would be a nay.
To support the motion means you want to leave the.
Leave status quo.
Leave it status quo. If you oppose the motion, then you want to move it forward.
Right,
No,
so
it's
if,
proposed.
yes.
Leave it as
Okay,
is.
I think
That's my motion.
it's a double.
I know
yeah.
it's a neg, that's why I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so all in favor of Ms. Chestnut's motion?
Does everyone hear what
Yeah, we may have-
Yes.
what a vote for this is? The
Okay.
motion is to leave it as a charter officer.
Correct,
So support that motion, you vote yea to.
correct.
Right, that's what I
Our
said.
language or the new language.
So if you want to leave it the way it currently stands in here, it would be nay.
Great.
Right.
Okay, so I think,
Okay,
yeah, I
if
think
you
we're-
support my motion, you would vote yes.
Yes.
Just leave it at that,
And so
please.
that's what you have to say.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Thank you.
All right, where are we now?
So that means this proposal goes forward.
Remain.
No.
Correct.
This is
Yes.
the-
Yes.
Yes.
So we
For
still have to vote
another
on it.
day, it remains for another
We've
day.
already voted on it.
we're not the last
Underneath
step.
the city.
No, it's not the last of it.
Okay.
She's trying to reverse that.
Right.
No, well, we vote, no, so we didn't vote
So
on
you
the actual.
keep, you keep it as
charter.
it is.
So we were supposed to vote on the language. as
We have to
well.
vote on the
Now
language
we have to
now.
vote on the
Right.
language.
Now we vote whether
Right. I
this
got you.
proposal-
Okay.
All right, so can I get a motion to,
Motion to take the language as proposed.
Legislative item 191054.
Four, correct.
All right, good.
So moved.
I
What?
guess question, just a question about this,
twice
but,
the
and
time.
maybe it's to Mr. Russo's point about the faith in the commission figuring it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I need to ask.
so,
We need a second.
Were you making a motion?
I thought you
I made a
seconded.
motion to support
So I thought I motioned
the
it. I can
proposed
motion
language, but
either one.
Yeah.
191054.
Correct, that's the
Right.
one we're still
Yeah.
on. Right, so we got a motion and a second from you, Mr. Beery?
Yeah, well, I'm one of the two. I don't know who the other one is.
You both moved. Someone needs to say second.
Okay,
Well, I'll
so,
say second, that's fine.
Okay,
nothing, I'm ready to vote.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
So all in favor of 19104 as presented?
191054.
054.
19104.
Raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 1910555, proposed charter amendment to increase salaries for members of the city commission.
Madam Chair, I think the city attorney had a question about this.
Yes.
So can we hear what they have
Yes.
to present first before we move forward? Jeremiah, did you get the information on this? Because it's directly related to how we did our,
Oh, no.
how we got to the
must have
base.
missed that one.
How we got to the base before we did our calculations moving forward, I think, under the, and she'll probably, I'll let her explain. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Mokler. I'm an assistant city attorney, and I was tasked with the assignment of trying to craft an ordinance that implemented your goals of
Give everybody a raise.
changing or establishing commissioner salaries that are based upon the Florida statute, which essentially governs Board of Commissioner salaries for county commissioners. So at first it seemed simple. It seemed that the salary would be solely based upon population. However, as I further delved into this process, I discovered that there are several other elements at work here. And this slide demonstrates what the formula looks like. And I attempted to put this into words, but I wanted you to understand what this formula looks like. And I developed this based upon the formula that they're currently using for county commissioners. So the first is salary is the base salary. So the Florida statute establishes a base salary based upon various categories of population for a county. And then you look at what the population is in excess of that category, multiply it by a specific group rate. That part's pretty easy. But then we get to these factors, and these factors are set forth in statute 145.19. And these factors are in the statute, and they could change, and they're also in part determined by a specific department within the state of Florida. This is statute 145.19. Annual factor means 1 plus the lesser of the average percentage increase in the salaries of state career service employees for the current fiscal year as determined by the Department of Management Services or as provided in the General Appropriations Act, or 7%. Currently, we're operating under subsection 1. B, cumulative annual factor. It means the product of all annual factors certified under this act prior to the fiscal year for which salaries are being calculated. So in this subsection B, the state of Florida began calculating annual factors in 1973. So we're going back probably more than 50 years in calculating this annual factor. And the Department of Management Services is tasked with establishing and certifying these annual factors every year. Initial factor means a factor of 1.292. That's all you need to know about that one. So that one is fixed. So what's of significance here is that if we use these factors, we have no control over changing them. We'd be dependent upon the state of Florida's calculations every year. So if the statute changed, then we would, in our charter laws, if they were written to reflect this statute, we would have to rely on a previous year's determination, and the calculation would remain stagnant until the charter laws were changed again. Here's an example calculation for City of Gainesville commissioners. You start with a base salary of $12,000, $12,000 a year, and that's based upon our population of approximately 136,000 people. Then you, so the category for our population is 100,000 to 200,000 in the statute, and that gives you a group rate of 0.045. Population above group minimum is 33,068, and so you get to that number by taking 133,000 people and subtracting 100,000. So your base salary is $13,488. Now, to get to your goal salary of $60,000, you have to multiply this by the factors. So you have the initial factor, certified annual factor, and again, the certified annual factor is the average increase in salary for state career service employees. So this year, it happened to be 1%. In other years during their session, it was 0.0015%. This coming year, it might be something like 4%. And then you multiply that by the certified cumulative annual factor. And again, we're looking at the certified annual factors for the last 50 years, and that's determined by the Department of Management Services for the state of Florida. So finally, that's how you arrive at this final salary of $60,550. Now you wanted to implement this over a 5-year period, and I thought that the easiest way that you could do this was to look at the current salary of $34,736 and the goal salary, what we estimate the salary might be in 5 years, of $60,550. Take the difference of those two numbers and then divide that difference by 5. So you come up with 5,162. So now you start with, for the first year, our current salary of $34,736. You add 5,162, come up with $39,898. Now for the second year, you simply keep adding 5,162. And third year, you add the same 5,162. So fifth year, you hope that you're almost there, but we can't be sure because, again, the factors are going to change every single year. So I would propose that for the 6th year, then, you would increase or decrease that salary to be what the formula says it should be. I think that's it for the slides.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
So the only thing that would decrease based on the calculations you just showed us is if the population decreased of the city?
The certified annual factor also.
That's one element. However, I could also decrease, well, I don't know.
If the certified annual factor has been a positive number, that wouldn't decrease the salary, right? That would just decrease the amount of raise they would have gotten.
To be cutting the population above group minimum, that gets smaller.
It was only if that certified annual factor was a negative number.
Yeah, which you won't.
Would it go down?
That's what coronavirus keeps us.
The first person that mentioned. Sorry.
But, I mean, can I just ask a question from reading, the comments, is that basically, it's this, staff attorneys, saying that this is needlessly complex and will be confusing to the electorate, which I agree with, either in the ballot question or in the text of the amendment, and the recommendation is to simplify the approach, such as establishing a base salary and an annual increase, which is what they currently do. They get it, I think, by the CPI, if I'm not mistaken, which, could be 1.5%, could be 3%. But, or, and again, I know this is a political suicide, having them
Vote on their own.
vote themselves a raise. And I mean, I think they deserve a raise. I again repeat that I just don't think this belongs in the charter period. But anyway, go ahead.
So I thank you a lot for demystifying this black box. I spent many days staring at numbers and referring back to people that are more fresh on math than I am to help with this. But I don't think any of this deserves to be in the charter. What we had discussed was the charter language being the City of Gainesville salary shall be determined by state formula for county commissioners, itemized annually and implemented over evenly over a 5-year period. And that seems like that black box doesn't need to be in there, and that's in there. And also the fact that we don't have control over this, and that Tallahassee can do something weird, which is fine. They can do that. I think they do a lot of weird stuff every year, but we also thought that was actually a plus of the salary being out of our hands. This is something that the state determines for county commissioners in 67 counties. It's something that they can also help determine for the City of Gainesville.
So with what you just said, if the state does something weird and significantly decreases the salaries of the county commissioners,
Yeah.
that if we do the language as you mentioned just now, it would significantly decrease the commission salaries.
It would. I don't think the state has the ability to drastically change 67 county commission salaries.
Ms. Goodison? And then
I think we're relying on a pretty stable model, which is how the county commission salaries are set. And so I haven't seen any wild changes coming out of Tallahassee that would concern me to the point that would, entertain that. And I was under the same understanding as Member Tattersall that we weren't going to include all this in the ordinance. We were going to reference the statute that sets the county commission salaries.
Mr. Berry?
Well, it's in addition to the commission salaries, this model affects sheriff's salaries, for example.
School board members.
School boards, and there's a lot of impact that
Right.
negates the possibility of any of that happening.
I think the city attorney is having issues with how do they put it in an ordinance, and I think this is why this came up, because they were trying to mimic the county's salaries and put it into the ordinance. And I see our attorney.
So the issue is, we only reference a statute when the statute actually applies to us. And in this case, these statutes don't apply to us. So when you want to have the same effect, though, what you do is you take and copy the statute and you put it into city ordinance or city charter or whatever. So that's what needs to be done, because the voters won't understand when they go look at a statute that doesn't apply to us, how we're trying to make it apply to us. And we can't do that. Only the legislature can make it apply to us. So we can write an ordinance that brings all of that language in. It's tough to write a ballot question that explains that.
Okay, I'm going to need a motion. I'm sorry, but can we get a motion to extend the meeting? I
We
mean,
extend the meeting 10 minutes.
okay.
15
Second,
minutes.
Till 6:15.
to 6:15.
Yeah.
Second, anybody?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
And so that led us to believe that if 60,550 is where it would be today, set that as a base and then have increases and set the mayor's at 70,550. And then you don't have to and then that's easily understood to the voters. Plus every year, whatever city staff have to compute this thing is going to have questions. They're going to be calling my office every year, wondering how this statute works.
Well, you're just going to have to keep her on. She's the expert, Phil.
I mean,
Crystal, will you
it's
take
even
over?
a step further than that. I mean, it's poor construction to have a charter, which is, as we discussed, a very difficult to amend document. It's a living document. Reference a statute which can be changed in the room of the legislature. Maybe it's just renumbered, and then you got the same problems you have here. But beyond that, this statute then relies upon determination by the Department of Management Services. Who knows if there's going to be a Department of Management Services 5 years from now? Maybe they decide to call it the Department of Do. Those things happen, as we know. So you're relying upon an external statute you have no control over, which relies upon an external department which we have no control over, which then has a formula that even for the state is at this point gotten convoluted. We're relying on a 1973 base salary as amended to a 1979, then is brought up to date on a yearly basis, all based upon the apparent wages of state career service employees for the relevant current fiscal years.
Mr. Kemp,
It's a step beyond a step beyond a step beyond a step, when the fact matters, if a scheme like this was desirable, the commission could put it in the ordinances.
So,
Then these problems won't be brought.
quick question, would it be capable of just making the statement that whatever the Alachua County Commissioner makes deemed by the state, that would be the starting basis for the salary analysis.
Could I change that a little bit more? Is if you could just reference using the formula utilized to determine county commission salary, Alachua County Commission salaries, so you don't have to cite an ordinance or a state statute, but there's going to be a way that the county commission salaries are determined indefinitely, unless if they start going on a volunteer board, I don't think they're going to do that, then that would reference the statute in a roundabout way. Can I just finish my thought real fast though?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
because I agree with everything that the staff is saying right now, that about things being hard, things to change, and you shouldn't want to change them, add things that are hard to change there. This is one thing that I do want hard to change. I want it to be taken away from the politics of it. I want there to just be this black box that every year is determined what the salary is. They say this is fair for the county commissioners. They say this is fair for the school board. They say this is fair for everything else here. They should that should be what is fair for the city commission also. That's the kind of idea there, is that it's taken away from really the politics of it internally within the commission, because they can't do it themselves. I mean, could the county commission change their salaries? No, they can't. They can't do it really. I mean, they have to change the laws in the state of Florida to do it.
Okay, so you would just, your reference would be to the county commission, not to the Alachua County Commission, just to the county commission, is that what you're saying?
I would think the Alachua County Commission?
I think that will raise the ire of citizens
Okay.
greatly, because the city commission does not have the boundaries of the Alachua County Commission. So I think going to the statute and citing the statute, it's really where you want to go.
But the statute changes.
This,
So like
so does the county commission salary based on the statute, but I think if you put the county commission in this ordinance, this will sink it.
So could it be something like saying, I mean, would it be another way of doing this thing where?
I think it would be however the statute addresses the salaries of, I don't know what you want to call them, public officials or,
Mr. Blount, I'm sorry.
just let me finish, I haven't
Okay.
finished my sentence. Thank you. I'm looking at staff for how it is addressed in the state statute. How do they address these officials? The salaries for county commissioners, school board.
I think it had.
It's through this complicated.
Okay, but what is the language? What is the language? They have some language before they get to that.
There's a chart with a dollar figure that correlates with the population range.
Right.
That's the dollar figure, the base figure from 1973.
That's not.
Then you have the factor, see,
It's
that's
not-
what,
it's not.
that's what the question is it that this body is opposed to putting a number for what the commissioners should fairly be compensated before the voters? Because that's what it appears like. We're trying to find a way to dance around,
Yes.
saying they should be paid $65,000 and increased annually
I think they
based
should
upon
be,
some index.
I
that's, well,
think
'cause it's
I'm-
not a dollar amount, I think they should be paid what the state formula says.
I am still asking, what is the language that the statute has some words before you get to this formula? I'm trying to get to those words.
I've been trying to look it up too.
The career service employees for the state, which those aren't city
No, they're not.
Right.
Rank and file.
And I think,
Well,
Is that-
yeah,
Mr. Blount, can we just not keep going back and forth?
I know, it's related to what Juice.
$1973. That's where the $12,000 is.
Mr. Blount, I'm sorry.
The staff's suggestion is entirely practical. We have a figure, 60,550. So the language we can propose is raise the salaries of city commissioners to 60,550 and the mayor to 70,550 in annual equal increments over 5 years. This formula is parallel to state calculations for county commissioners. Then you don't have to refer to a statute number, you don't have to explain all these charts and tables, just say where it came from but propose the number that you know. We have the number. What's?
Because it's going to change every year.
Sure.
It changes every year. That's the thing is, $34,000
How-
was pretty good a decade ago, but it hasn't changed.
That's why we're seeing it this year, and we picked a number and we say that's where we're going. Set the goal, go there, and give these 5 annual steps, and tell the people this compares to the current calculation for county commissioners' salaries.
Ms. Goodson?
I think, and in between for the two of you, what they're recommending is to set a number, but then also put in the language in annual increase, fixed percentage or fixed dollar amount, or something like the percentage increases budgeted for city employees, which will recognize consumer price index. So I think we've got, on one hand, this very practical, straightforward approach, and on the other hand, I don't know that we fully explored the other one, because I'd like to see what the state statute looks like. I don't know that that whole formula is in the actual statute.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is complicated.
We had it at the prior meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the
Tattersall.
clarification.
Now, this is like I think the third time this meeting I've recommended something similar to this. Would it be possible to
Redundancy helps.
to push is to have in the charter that every year that the city commission salary shall be set by ordinance determined by the state statute, blah, blah, blah. But that saying that the ordinance has to be set by, not the state statute, but by the statute determining the county commission salaries. And so every year they have to draft an ordinance saying what their salary is, which sucks, but I think that if we just reference, I'm not a legal expert or a legal person in any stretch of the imagination, and I also believe that laws are legal fictions we choose to believe, but I don't understand why we can't just say city commission salaries shall be determined using the formula for state county officials, or I guess for county officials determined by the state of Florida, utilizing that formula. I mean, that formula could change, but we're not citing what that formula actually is.
Ms. Chestnut?
Maybe it would be better to have the city commissioners to opt out instead of opting into the salary.
What does that mean?
That means that they would have to vote against giving themselves,
Oh,
that's the opt-out.
man, that's a political minefield.
Yeah.
It's a political minefield, no matter which way it goes.
Yeah, I think we're, trying to get fair pay with making it the least
Yeah.
political minefield as
Sort of
possible.
talking myself into thinking that maybe the city commission just needs to bite the bullet.
Yes.
I totally
And
agree.
it's
Have
been
some
adopted.
backbone.
Yeah, and adopt the formula as presented.
Well, they currently do get the CPI, and they didn't even get it for a few years, is my understanding, and they had to go back and recalculate
Is that
for the past 2 or
1%?
3 years. No, it's, 1.9 last year, it was 2 point something the year before. That's how we calculate our water rates, so.
When is our next
Oh, I feel like we're almost out of time. I think this
Yeah,
needs more
I
discussion.
think this needs more thought and discussion, because we don't really have anything to vote on.
Do I move that to table the motion?
Yes.
I move that we table legislative item 191055 to the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll second
All in
that.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we don't have really time to go over the work plan, review the timeline, but I think we're okay if we,
We got 5 minutes.
Well, okay, 190358 work plan review. Does anybody have any comment on it?
Well, yes, the mayor's asking for specific background as to the,
Well, that's coming up later. We're not on that one yet.
First of May 7th.
Let's just go back. So we are going to have an additional CRC meeting on the 18th, March 18th, from 4 to 6. Is that correct? Everybody's got that. And then we can finish these items up, hopefully.
March 18th.
March 18th, it's a Wednesday. It's from 4 to 6. And then, huh?
City Hall.
yes, City Hall.
Oh, at City Hall? Okay, thank you.
Velocity's taking us out.
Done with you, pizza.
Basement or which room?
I'll let you know. I'm not sure.
Okay, so with that being said,
March 18th.
The other thing, again, like, you've got your work plan and the timeline, I don't think we have to have any discussion on that, but the letter from Mayor Poe is asking for a letter from me prior to their May meeting to talk about what we, why we came up with these things. And I think it's important and different people's perspective, and I'm going to have to go back through the minutes, because some things are certain people's things.
Yeah.
And I also want to include, like Mr. Henry had said before, some of the things that we talked about, but decided, like residency, or that there were, not everything was unanimous, and that people had differing opinions, and so that they understand that we, everybody kind of had, and the different reasons. But I'm not going to get into full detail, but just do a summary. But I might have Marie reach out to some of you guys, or I could do a draft and have her send it around with any case,
That's what I was going to suggest. Take the maker and the seconder and have them do some verbiage, give it to you.
Or take it from the minutes. There's
Yeah, that's
verbiage in
it.
the minutes.
Yeah, I was just going to take it from the minutes and then send it around.
Well, okay, I'm just trying to reduce your work.
No.
She's paid big bucks for this
That's right.
job.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Is there any
Yes.
member comment?
Whoa.
Come on, you get
Good
three
move.
minutes and we still have public comment.
Okay, I have, I just have a question, and I'm sorry I was late, I didn't hear your preamble discussion.
Yeah.
But you may remember, a previous meeting, I proposed some language about racial equity, which was apparently soaked with gasoline. And there was a suggestion that it would be referred to or brought up in a preamble. So should I take it that this line proactively foster equal opportunity of the broad cultural diversity of the city and inclusiveness that focuses on justice and equality? Is that the
Yes.
part that?
I mean, because again, I gave you the colored versions of it so that those are the spine or the bones of the preamble. And, where it's covering not just racial, gender, LGBTQ, religious,
Yeah,
socioeconomic. I thought you said social.
well, I will say thanks for the attempt, but that doesn't begin to accomplish what I said in that statement, and as any weak organ, this will produce nothing.
Well, everybody voted unanimously for it when you weren't here. I mean, I understand your thing was,
My thing was specific. It would have caused the city commission to examine all existing policies and expose all future policies. And this doesn't suggest any kind of comprehensive report like that. Not a hint.
With all due respect to the commission, they have a position in the city that could initiate such a thing. I mean, the EO office could, not unilaterally, but there's an avenue.
That's why I felt the charter should give it a strong support.
Ms.
So,
Goodison.
so I think, yeah, Mr. Bell, I'm sorry that you weren't here when we voted on this. I see this as twofold. One, as a preamble to set the values and the stage for the charter. But I also think if you're not satisfied with this, there's still room to put forth something more specific and that goes further for the charter to do some of the things that you
For us to review.
for us to review. So I don't think this is mutually exclusive. I think we can still, there's still room to do more.
Yes, something separate, but it doesn't, that language doesn't belong in a preamble, that's just a preamble. But,
Twofold.
right. Any further member comment? Any public comment?
Yes. Hi. Hey, I know very little about what you're doing. It's my very first time participating.
Yeah, there's a microphone.
Make it official.
They're going to be outed.
Where is this thing?
Up front,
Microphone.
That thing?
yes.
Okay, God.
Podium.
Can we get closer than that? All right, whatever.
We could wheel it, we could wheel it.
Hi, my name is Mark Van Soesberg. Hello. Well, that's not where the contact message. I know very little about the process. I read something about kicking the general manager out of the clan? Was that on the agenda today?
Kicking the who out of the clan?
I think that might
There-
have been-
You
There
know
was,
what I'm talking about? Sorry.
well, that's not what it's referred to, but yes, that was on the agenda.
There was something that said, how do you word it? Go ahead.
Removing the charter, the general manager for utilities is a charter officer.
Removing the charter officer and?
Putting him underneath the
Yeah, the
city
the general
manager
manager.
position.
So the way I read it is that you have, for example, I don't know, let's say you're running a project for NASA, and you have this mission, you know what I mean, that goes to Mars or something like that. And it's very important. And now you give the whole program to somebody who has no experience in running space flights. So by moving, I understand the idea of like getting the person, the general manager, out of the group of commissioners. I get that sort of feeling. Like people come there and they complain about their bills and all that. I get that feeling. Giving this to a person who is busy running the other departments of the city is like not just doubling the amount of work for the city manager. It's also it's a specialty. It's like almost if you say Donald Waller was like a professor at Santa Fe, and all of a sudden we asked her to run, say, a department at Shands. It's a completely separate thing. So giving the responsibility of running GRU and sort of making it removed from the city commission is asking for dysfunctionality. Is my opinion, because the way I'm reading it, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but by taking the person that runs GRU further away from the city commission and putting somebody in between who's not skilled at it would be like asking somebody. You don't think it's completely nuts? It's like a dysfunctional thing. It's too important. It's too big. If it was a minor thing, like say it was grounds or public works, and I could say, I'm trying to say maybe, but not somebody that oversees so much, and moving them in the hands of somebody who already is busy running departments in the city and giving that person the responsibility of administrating, or oversight of the utility, which is our communication, our water, our electricity, has to do with sewer systems, has to do with maintenance of roads. It's too big to just sort of shove on to this general manager person.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do just want to clarify, we're not proposing that the general manager assume the responsibilities of the city manager assume the responsibilities of the general manager of the utilities. That is not what this is doing.
We should have used the term matrix.
We should have used a different term, because that would be
And you
crazy.
can go online and view our prior discussions before you got here regarding
I
it.
the title.
Yeah.
I went with the title. The title says you're removing this person from an important function.
Right.
does.
Giving it to another person
Okay,
who's
well,
already
The
busy.
position.
Nothing
we're
about
talking
giving
the
it to-
position.
All right,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's
why I
fine.
read it.
So that's
My
why I
English
just,
is not
okay,
good.
that's why you don't.
thank
Okay.
you for coming.
Your English is very good.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor,
Thank
aye.
you. Thank
I
you.
never, at my